Most gardeners believe the only way to grow more potatoes is by planting more plants, more seeds, more fertilizer, more space. But what if the real secret to a massive potato harvest has nothing to do with planting more at all? What if one simple trick could turn a single potato plant into a surprisingly large harvest? The truth is, most potato plants never reach their full potential, not because the soil is poor, but because the plant is never given the chance to grow the way nature designed it. And once you understand this simple method, you may never grow potatoes the old way again. Let's begin by understanding why most potato harvests stay small in the first place. 1. Why most potato plants produce small harvests. To understand why many gardeners end up with small potato harvests, we first need to look at how a potato plant actually grows beneath the soil. Many people imagine potatoes growing in a very simple way. They picture a plant above the ground and a few potatoes forming directly under it, almost like carrots or onions. But potatoes don't grow like that at all. In reality, the potato plant follows a much more complex and fascinating process that most gardeners never fully realize. When a potato plant begins to grow, it sends out special underground stems known as stolons. These stolons are not roots. They are actually horizontal stems that travel outward through the soil beneath the plant. Along the length of each stolon, small swelling points begin to form. Over time, these swelling points expand and eventually develop into the potatoes we harvest at the end of the season. You can imagine these stolons like underground branches spreading through the soil. And just like branches on a tree can produce many leaves, each stolon has the potential to produce multiple potatoes along its length. In theory, a single healthy potato plant has the ability to create a surprisingly large harvest if the underground conditions allow it. But this is exactly where most gardens unknowingly limit the plant's potential. In many backyard gardens, potatoes are planted in relatively shallow soil. The plant begins its growth normally, and the underground stolons start extending outward. However, because the soil layer is not very deep, those stolons quickly reach areas close to the surface. When this happens, they encounter light and warmer temperatures near the top layer of the soil. This small environmental change has a huge effect on the plant's behavior. When potato stolons reach the surface or become exposed to light, the plant begins to redirect its energy. Instead of continuing to produce new potatoes underground, the plant shifts its focus toward growing taller stems and leaves above the soil. The energy that could have produced more potatoes is now being used to expand the visible plant. The result is something many gardeners experience every year. The potato plants above ground may look healthy, tall, and full of leaves, but when harvest time arrives, the yield is surprisingly small. You dig into the soil expecting a large harvest, but instead, you find only a few potatoes clustered near the base of the plant. This happens not because the plant was weak or unhealthy, but because it simply ran out of underground space to continue producing tubers. The potato plant had the potential to produce many more, but the environment around it limited its ability to keep forming new stolons. Without enough dark, loose soil surrounding the stems, the underground potato factories stop forming much earlier than they should. Understanding this one simple limitation completely changes the way we look at potato gardening. The secret to growing a massive harvest isn't always about adding more fertilizer or planting more seed potatoes. Instead, it often comes down to giving the plant the right conditions, so its natural growth system can continue working beneath the soil. And once gardeners realize how important underground space is for potato production, they discover a simple technique that can dramatically increase their harvest without spending extra money or planting more plants. That technique is the powerful trick we will explore next. 2. The simple trick that multiplies potato growth. Now that you understand why many potato plants produce small harvests, the next step is learning how to unlock the plant's full potential. The secret is surprisingly simple, yet it completely changes how the plant grows beneath the soil. Experienced gardeners and farmers have been using this technique for generations, but many home gardeners either overlook it or underestimate how powerful it really is. The method is called hilling. At first glance, hilling seems almost too simple to make a big difference. All it involves is gradually adding soil around the base of the potato plant as it grows. But this small action triggers a powerful response inside the plant. To understand why it works, think back to the underground stems we talked about earlier, the stolons. These stolons are responsible for producing the potatoes we harvest. The more healthy stolons a plant produces, the more opportunities it has to form new potatoes. When a potato plant first emerges from the soil, it begins developing a vertical stem above ground and stolons below the surface. If the soil level stays the same, the stolons eventually reach the upper layers of soil where light and warmth begin to interfere with potato formation. When that happens, the plant slows down its tuber production and focuses its energy on growing leaves and stems above ground instead. But hilling changes this entire process. When you gently mound fresh soil around the base of the plant, you bury a portion of the stem that was previously above ground. Something remarkable happens when that stem is covered. The buried section of the stem begins to behave like the original underground portion of the plant. In response to being surrounded by soil and darkness, the plant starts producing new stolons from that buried stem. Each time new stolons develop, they create additional places where potatoes can form. In other words, by adding soil around the plant, you are not simply covering it. You are actually encouraging the plant to create more underground growth zones, which leads to more potatoes developing within the soil. This process can repeat several times during the growing season. As the plant grows taller, you add another layer of soil around the base. The plant responds again by producing more underground stems. Each new layer becomes another opportunity for potato formation. Instead of a single shallow layer of potatoes forming near the original seed potato, the plant begins producing potatoes at multiple levels beneath the soil. The result is a much larger harvest from the same plant. This is why farmers often grow potatoes in raised rows or mounds of soil. Those mounds provide extra space for the underground stems to expand and produce more tubers. Without that space, the plant's ability to multiply its harvest becomes limited. Another important benefit of hilling is protection. Potatoes exposed to sunlight turn green and develop compounds that make them bitter and unsafe to eat. By continually adding soil around the base of the plant, you keep the developing potatoes safely buried in darkness, allowing them to grow larger and healthier. Hilling also improves soil conditions around the plant. Fresh soil helps maintain moisture, improves air circulation around the roots, and encourages stronger root development. All of these factors contribute to a healthier plant that can support a bigger harvest. What makes this technique so powerful is that it does not require expensive fertilizers or special equipment. It simply works with the natural behavior of the potato plant. Instead of fighting the plant's biology, you guide it in a way that allows it to do what it already wants to do: produce more potatoes. And once gardeners see how dramatically this simple method increases their yield, it becomes clear why experienced growers rely on it season after season. But understanding the concept is only part of the process. To truly get the maximum harvest, the technique must be done at the right time and in the right way. In the next chapter, we'll look at exactly how to apply this method step by step to turn an ordinary potato plant into a surprisingly productive one. 3. How to use this trick for a massive potato harvest. Now that you understand the simple trick behind multiplying potato growth, the next step is knowing exactly how to apply it in your garden. The method itself is not complicated, but the timing and the way you build the soil around the plant can make a huge difference in the final harvest. When done correctly, this technique allows one potato plant to produce far more tubers than most gardeners expect. The process begins before the plant even appears above the soil. When planting seed potatoes, it is important to start with loose, well-drained soil. Potatoes grow best in soil that allows air and moisture to move easily through it. Heavy, compacted soil can restrict the development of stolons and limit the number of potatoes the plant can produce. Ideally, you should plant the seed potatoes about 4 inches deep in rows or containers that give the plant plenty of room to expand underground. Once planted, the seed potato begins developing roots and sending a green shoot toward the surface. Within a couple of weeks, the first leaves will appear above the soil. At this stage, the plant is still small and fragile, but it is already beginning to establish the underground system that will eventually produce your harvest. As the plant grows taller and reaches around 6 to 8 inches in height, it is time for the first step of the trick. Take loose soil from around the garden and gently mound it around the base of the plant. You want to cover the lower portion of the stem while leaving the top leaves exposed to sunlight. The plant may look partially buried, but this is exactly what encourages it to produce new underground stems. Over the next couple of weeks, the plant will continue growing upward. The leaves will stretch toward the sun, and the buried portion of the stem will begin developing new stolons beneath the soil. These stolons are where additional potatoes will begin to form. Once the plant grows another 6 to 8 inches taller, you repeat the process by adding another layer of soil around the base. Each time you hill soil around the plant, you are essentially creating a deeper underground environment where new potatoes can grow. Instead of a single shallow layer of potatoes forming near the original seed potato, the plant begins producing potatoes at multiple levels beneath the soil. This vertical growth space allows the plant to multiply its harvest dramatically without needing more plants. It is important to keep the soil loose and slightly moist during this process. Potatoes prefer consistent moisture, but they do not like waterlogged soil. If the soil becomes too compacted or too wet, the developing tubers may struggle to grow properly. Adding organic material such as compost can help improve soil texture and provide nutrients that support healthy plant growth. Another advantage of this method is protection. As potatoes develop near the surface, they can become exposed to sunlight, which causes them to turn green and develop compounds that make them bitter and unsafe to eat. By continually adding soil around the plant, you keep the developing potatoes covered and protected in darkness where they can grow properly. Throughout the growing season, the potato plant will continue expanding both above and below the soil. With each layer of soil you add, you are encouraging the plant to create new areas where tubers can develop. By the time the plant reaches full size, the underground space around it may contain multiple layers of potatoes forming at different depths. When harvest time finally arrives and the plant begins to die back, the reward becomes clear. Instead of digging up just a few potatoes clustered near the original seed piece, you will often find potatoes scattered throughout the entire mound of soil. What started as a single small seed potato has turned into a surprisingly large harvest simply because you gave the plant the space it needed to grow. This technique shows how powerful simple gardening knowledge can be. You do not always need expensive fertilizers or complicated tools to improve your harvest. Sometimes the biggest difference comes from understanding how a plant naturally grows and creating the conditions that allow it to thrive. By using this method and gradually building soil around your potato plants throughout the season, you allow the plant's natural growth system to work to its full potential. And when that happens, even a small garden can produce a harvest that feels far larger than expected. Now you understand something that many gardeners overlook. Growing a bigger potato harvest isn't always about adding more fertilizer or planting more seeds. Sometimes the real secret is simply understanding how the plant wants to grow and giving it the space to do what nature designed it to do. With this simple technique, a single potato plant can produce far more than most people expect. What once seemed like a small harvest can turn into a basket full of potatoes, all from the same plant and the same garden bed. This is the beauty of gardening. The more we understand the hidden systems beneath the soil, the more nature rewards our patience and effort. So the next time you plant potatoes in your garden, remember this simple trick and give your plants the chance to reach their full potential. You might be surprised at just how much food one plant can produce. And if you enjoy learning simple, powerful gardening secrets like this, make sure to subscribe and stay connected with the channel. Because the next tip we share might help you grow even more food right in your own backyard. Happy gardening, and may your next harvest be bigger than ever.